Director General, distinguished delegates, civil society colleagues. Since its adoption, the Chemical Weapons Convention has banned development, possession, and use of weaponized toxic chemicals. However, whether this prohibition applied to law enforcement use of certain chemicals that act on the central nervous system remained the subject of debate. In December 2021, the 26th Conference of States Parties adopted a decision in the form of an understanding, clarifying that the CWC did prohibit aerosolized use of CNS acting chemical agents for law enforcement purposes. Although a landmark advance, the threat of CNS agent weaponization remains. Whilst 85 states supported the understanding, the vote was opposed by 10 states. And there is concern that certain of these may not feel constrained by its prohibitions. The task now falls on all CWC states to implement this decision fully and to build upon it. States must clarify the range of toxic chemicals covered by this decision, identify and verifiably destroy relevant CNS agent weapon stocks, munitions, and other delivery mechanisms, and close down research and development of any new CNS acting aerosolized weapons. In addition, further guidance is required to ensure that any existing or future law enforcement weapons that use toxic chemicals, including toxins and bioregulators that act on other core human physiological processes beyond the CNS, are also prohibited. Additional guidance should clarify that these prohibitions should not be restricted to aerosol weapons, but cover all law enforcement weaponized use of toxic chemicals acting on the CNS or other core physiological processes, no matter how they are delivered. The CWC permits the use of riot control agents for law enforcement, including domestic riot control purposes, but only provided they are used in types and quantities consistent with such purposes. However, they have been frequently misused for serious human rights violations, most commonly in non-custodial settings to restrict, intimidate, or punish those participating in public protest the world over, and also in the prisons, detention centers, or police stations of certain countries to ill-treat individuals. A recurring medical concern has been their use in excessive quantities in the open air or in confined spaces where the targeted individuals cannot disperse. In such situations, serious injury or death can result, including from the toxic properties of the chemical agents or from asphyxiation. A particularly shocking case has been the inappropriate use of excessive amounts of tear gas by the police of an Asian state to quell disturbances at a football match on the 1st of October 2022. The use of tear gas, the resulting crowd panic and stampede, compounded by overcrowding and locked exits, led to the deaths of over 130 people, with hundreds more injured. Building upon the previous work of the Scientific Advisory Board, identifying chemicals that fulfill the definition of an RCA, guidance should be developed as to the quantities of identified RCAs that can legitimately be employed in law enforcement. Such guidance should acknowledge relevant obligations under international human rights law to ensure such RCA employment is proportionate, necessary, and does not endanger life or health. The current situation could dramatically worsen as a result of contemporary development, marketing, and subsequent deployment of systems capable of delivering significant amounts of RCAs over wide areas or extended distances. In addition to potential misuse for collective ill-treatment or punishment of crowds, such wide area RCA delivery mechanisms could be employed as force multipliers in conjunction with firearms, making lethal force more deadly on a large scale. Although nominally developed for law enforcement, they may also be incorporated into military arsenals and subsequently used in armed conflict in contravention of the CWC. Civil society researchers have documented development and promotion of wide area RCA delivery mechanisms, including indoor dispersion devices, external area denial devices, multi-barrel projectile launchers, large caliber projectiles, and delivery mechanisms mounted on remote weapon systems, unmanned ground vehicles, and drones. In recent years, proliferation, use, and misuse of wide area RCA delivery mechanisms has begun. In 2018, the security forces of a Middle East state used tear gas drones in response to mass protests, in some cases against peaceful protesters, bystanders, journalists, and field medical facilities. In 2022, this state authorized further employment of such RCA drones for law enforcement purposes. In 2019 and 2021, respectively, the security forces of a second Middle East state and a state in the Americas inappropriately employed multi-barrel launchers to fire salvos of tear gas projectiles into protesting crowds. All CWC states parties should collectively establish an OPCW process to determine those RCA delivery mechanisms that are prohibited under the Chemical Weapons Convention and develop guidance on appropriate use of permitted RCA delivery mechanisms. We thank you for your kind attention and request this statement be made part of the official published proceedings of this conference. Thank you.